crowd, baby! What a crowd! This place is on fire!
That's the healthy look at ball. Kane dancing in. Kane scores! What a goal!
Kane, Spinorama scores! Patrick Kane! Oh dear.
Turnover here. Kane's a Kane. 2-on-1. Hustling back to point out. Shot. Score! Patrick Kane in overtime!
Showtime. Blackhawks legend. The most dominant US-born NHL player of his generation. A never-ending gift of offensive brilliance wrapped in an inconspicuously small package. At times bold and cocky, at others humble and considered. An unabashed hockey geek, savage competitor, and guaranteed life of the party, whose jersey seemed destined for the rafters from the very first time he stepped onto NHL ice. This is the story behind Patrick Kane. Patrick Timothy Kane II was born November 19, 1988 in Buffalo, New York, the oldest child in a family that would eventually grow to include 3 young sisters. He started skating relatively late in life, at the ripe age of 6, and quickly developed what would become a lifelong obsession with hockey the following year on his first team. As he put it years later, if there were 365 days in the year, I was probably on ice for 350 of them, multiple times a day. That dedication soon paid off with an invitation to join the Buffalo Saints, an elite tournament team assembled to hone the best Western New York hockey talent. And the Saints didn't just lay the foundation for Kane's hockey skill set. It's where he first formed his dramatic hockey personality. Insisting on a black aesthetic, Kane painted his stick black, purchased black blade holders, blacked out the logo on his skates, removed the logo from his gloves, and buffed out any white on his helmet. A common refrain about Kane was also born during those early years in Buffalo. He's too small. From day one, Kane's slight stature provided fuel for his naysayers, but it was apparent to those playing against him that his skill and hockey IQ were elite. As was his grit, Kane developed an effective backhand out of necessity after he broke his arm and continued playing with the cast. To feed his hockey mania, his parents Patrick Sr. and Donna turned their basement into a mini indoor hockey rink complete with boards and a shiny white concrete floor. Kane was a hockey fanatic. If he wasn't playing hockey, he was watching it. And if he wasn't watching it, he was talking about it. And when you ask him about his childhood, he says that mostly what he remembers about it is hockey. But this cozy existence came to an abrupt end when Kane was 14 years old. Sensing a special talent on their hands, Kane's parents conceded to allow him to move to Detroit to join the AAA Honey Baked Hockey Club, coached by Donnie Harkins, and bill it with 20-year NHL veteran Pat Verbeek. Away from the cocoon of his close-knit family, that move exposed Kane to an unexpected level of harshness. Harkins' tactics involved breaking sticks, mocking players, and lots of shouting, particularly at Kane, who always seemed to come out of the worst intermissions with an even stronger fire in his belly. From there, he entered the U.S. National Team Development Program, registering 32 goals and 38 assists in 63 games with the U-17 team in his first year. The following year, in 2005-06, he had 52 goals and 50 assists in 58 games with the U-18 team. It was then that the Ontario Hockey League came calling, with the London Knights drafting Kane 88th overall in 2004. He was now seen as a potential NHL draft pick. No one expected him to go very high, though. He was, after all, still small. As fate would have it, by 2007, the once legendary Chicago Blackhawks had fallen on hard times, having failed to make the playoffs for 8 of the previous 9 seasons. But April 10, 2007 would turn out to be a momentous day in the domino chain of destiny. The troubled Blackhawks won the NHL draft lottery for the first time in franchise history, despite having just an 8.1% chance of doing so. Unlike some draft classes, there was no clear frontrunner in 2007, and shortly thereafter, Kane was named OHL Rookie of the Year after leading all rookies with 145 points in 58 games. Fate was calling. The Blackhawks answered.
This historic pick, the first time ever the Chicago Blackhawks have had the first pick, and we proudly select Patrick Kane.
After standing out in the team's prospects camp a month later, he signed a 3-year, $11 million contract. And Kane wasn't the only young talent en route to the Hawks. An influx of promising players were about to converge on the city. Chief among them, Jonathan Toews, who became the 3rd youngest captain in NHL history and just so happened to have that intangible on-ice magic with Kane that so many dynamic duos are known for.
Here comes Toews. Jonathan Toews moving in. What a move! Oh my goodness! Oh man! Oh man! Wow! Kane's going down the slide. He's got the puck. Score! Oh boy! We have seen Toews and Kane with very, very nice goals tonight. You wonder why we talked about it at the beginning of the broadcast. You wonder why people are excited. You've seen 2 examples tonight.
The combination of Toews' serious approach and Kane's pizzazz paved the way for the most dominant era in Blackhawks history. Kane burst onto the NHL scene with the ferocity of a cocky teenager, racking up a decisive 13 points in his first 9 games. But it's his first goal from his first home game that he remembers most vividly. He notched the point in a shootout, fleecing childhood idol Dominic Hasek, who he asked for a picture with following the win.
So here comes the former London Knight Jr., Patrick Kane on Hasek. Scores! You're watching the future of the Chicago Blackhawks right there.
Kane's dominance continued throughout the season. He led the team with 72 points and 51 assists by the end of the year and led all NHL rookies in scoring, winning the Calder Trophy. And at last, he had the final say on if he was too small for the NHL. By the way, Chicagoans had begun to take notice. The once empty United Center was now teeming with Blackhawks faithful, reinvigorated by the young core. By January 2009, Kane was named to the first of his 9 All-Star selections. By the end of the season, he had racked up 70 points in 80 regular season games, 2nd overall for the Hawks that year, and a point ahead of Toews. That effort was enough to help the Hawks accomplish what their long-suffering fans had been waiting for. They made the playoffs for the first time since 2001-02. But they didn't stop at merely making the playoffs. Kane and company marched all the way to the door of the Stanley Cup final with dramatic flair.
Comes Brian Campbell heading for the net. Patrick Kane shoots, he scores!
In the process, Kane recorded his first hat-trick during a Western Conference semifinal series clincher against the Vancouver Canucks.
Kane, backhand shot, he scores!
But the team stopped short of their ultimate goal after a Western Conference championship loss to the Red Wings. The pain was short-lived, however. This was a team to be reckoned with for years to come, and the Hawks ensured it by locking up Kane and Toews to identical 5-year, $31.5 million contract extensions in December 2009. The Hawks just had to take care of one thing: Kane's increasingly infamous reputation.
Early Sunday morning, South Buffalo native Pat Kane was arrested over an alleged dispute with the cab driver.
Kane's first spat of legal trouble occurred in August 2009 when he was arrested along with his cousin in the early morning hours in his hometown of Buffalo after an altercation with a cab driver. The cabbie accused the two of breaking his glasses, ripping his clothes, and breaking his nose over a 20-cent fare dispute.
One guy pays and the other guy grabs him by the throat. Patrick Kane turned out to be a hockey player. I don't know who they are.
The two pleaded guilty to a non-criminal charge of disorderly conduct and were given conditional discharges, but it was just the beginning of a string of controversial tales that would follow the young star in the coming years. The following season, photos of Kane partying shirtless in Vancouver with teammates John Madden and Chris Versteeg went viral, with even Kane admitting it was probably time to grow up a little bit. And Kane was about to check some very grown-up accomplishments off his to-do list. First, he nabbed a silver Olympic medal for Team USA that year at the Vancouver Olympic Games, losing the gold to Hawks teammate Toews. Kane then stormed into the 2009-10 season, notching 88 points and his first 30-goal campaign. The Hawks finished first in the Central with the league's 3rd best overall record.
Kane throws on the brakes. Comes right out in front, wheels one, and it's in! Patrick Kane, an amazing goal!
The Hawks dispatched Nashville and Vancouver in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, setting up a conference final showdown with Joe Thornton and the Pacific leading Sharks. But while the games were tight, Chicago managed to always come up with the winning hand, sweeping the series. For their part, Kane and Toews led the team in series points. In the final, the Hawks were staring down the Flyers and the league's longest active cup drought at 47 years. The back-and-forth series reached Game 6 with the Hawks up 3-2 and a chance to wrap up the series on the road at Wachovia Center. Tied 3-3, the game came down to overtime. Cue Kane at 4 minutes, 6 seconds into OT.
Handing on to Kane again. Lots of head fakes there, trying to shake Tiemann. Threw one in front. Oh my, it rattled around and it kicked on back and it scored. We saw no light, we saw no signal, and we're not sure if they've set a signal of a goal yet, but they are celebrating at the other end of the ice. What chaos!
Chicago went wild. The drought was over, and it evaporated under Kane's skillful shot, one of the biggest goals in NHL history. But more controversy for Kane followed. His penchant for parties dogged him into a 2012 weekend in Madison, Wisconsin after rowdy videos surfaced of Kane getting sloppy drunk. For his part, he called the video and photo evidence of his antics embarrassing. So he had an image to reclaim, and Kane was ready to silence the detractors. After 2 first-round exits in 2011 and 2012, the Hawks started the 2012-13 season, shortened due to a lockout, without a regulation loss through their first 24 games. It seems the lockout brought a freshness to Kane's game that had been missing in the previous years. He went to Switzerland to join EHC Biel, where he scored 23 points in 20 games in a thorough display of dominance. Back with the Blackhawks, it was clear the team's mission was to win another cup, and Kane did everything he could to get them there. That included pulling out his legendary spinorama to seal an 8-1 victory over the Dallas Stars.
Kane, spinorama scores! Patrick Kane! Oh dear.
The Hawks were 2013's President Trophy winners with 77 points and entered the playoffs with a corresponding amount of gusto, handily defeating Minnesota in 5 games before coming back from a 3-1 series deficit to advance past the Red Wings into the conference finals. There they met the Los Angeles Kings. Kane came through in the biggest moment, notching a hat trick for the game-winning goal in double overtime of Game 5 to advance to the Stanley Cup Finals.
Bickle, they force a turnover. Here's Toews and Kane. 2-on-1, hustling back is going up a shot. Patrick Kane in overtime!
And in the finals, the Hawks overcame the Bruins on an absolutely wild finish in Game 6. Trailing 2-1 late in the third, Chicago scored twice in 17 seconds to steal an improbable lead.
Feet in front, score! Toews to Bickle! Put away by Rad. Help to the back. O'Duya shot deflected. Scramble! They score! Bolin! 3-2 with less than a minute to go. 2 seconds and 1. The Blackhawks are Stanley Cup champions.
With 19 points overall, Kane was awarded the Conn Smythe Trophy as postseason MVP. Then it was back to the bargaining table where Kane and Toews united again to sign identical deals, this time for 8 years and $84 million, with no trade, no movement clauses. The two made it clear they wanted to retire as Blackhawks. And it turned out to be a mutually beneficial scenario. In 2014, Kane recorded a milestone 500th point in his 523rd game, a secondary assist on Toews' goal against the Ottawa Senators. After bowing out in the conference finals in 2014, the Hawks were back in the Cup Finals in 2015, the 3rd time in 6 seasons overall. And again, they would not be denied, with Kane scoring a goal and an assist in a gritty 2-0 win in Game 6 to clinch the series against Tampa Bay.
Kane drops it to Richards, across the Kane, he scores!
A remarkable feat for a club that seemed to suffer from a generational curse just years before. But even while it put Kane in a rare club of elite NHLers to ever three-peat in the same jersey, his off-ice antics continued to cast a shadow over his accomplishments.
Tonight, we are getting our first look at some of the photographic evidence that the Erie County investigators pored over in the Patrick Kane rape investigation.
In August 2015, days before his scheduled personal day with Lord Stanley, news broke that Buffalo police were investigating Kane for a possible sexual assault.
While I have too much respect for the legal process to comment on an ongoing matter, I am confident that once all of the facts are brought to light, I will be absolved of having done nothing wrong.
While it was eventually determined after a 3-month investigation that charges would not be filed, the damage to his reputation was done. And as it turns out, that would be Kane's last day with the Cup for the foreseeable future.
And here comes Kane. He scores!
But while the team's dominance diminished, Kane's individual brilliance did not. In April 2016, Kane's offensive genius dazzled as he produced his 4th career hat trick against the Bruins, and in doing so, notched his first 100-point season. That same year, he won the Hart Trophy for regular season MVP, the Ted Lindsay Award, the most outstanding player as chosen by his peers, and the Art Ross Trophy as the regular season scoring leader. But despite his efforts, the Blackhawks were eliminated in round 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs in a 3-2 Game 7 loss to the St. Louis Blues, who would go on to win it all. The loss marked the beginning of the end for one of the most dominant Blackhawks squads of all time. The next season, the Blackhawks again lost in the first round of the playoffs, before missing the playoffs entirely in 4 of the next 5 years. Kane still had his individual bright spots, though. On January 19, 2020, against the Winnipeg Jets at 31 years and 61 days old, Kane became the youngest US-born player to notch his 1,000th point, and just the 90th player in NHL history to reach that milestone. But it was clear the Blackhawks' glory days were officially a memory, with the team's top brass trading away pivotal pieces while trying to rebuild around Kane's and Taves' infamous no-trade, no-movement clauses. And just when Kane was looking like he was free of controversy after getting engaged to his longtime girlfriend in 2019 and becoming a father in 2020, he was ensnared in a franchise-wide sexual abuse scandal involving former Blackhawks prospect Kyle Beach. Beach came forward with a harrowing tale of sexual abuse at the hands of one-time Blackhawks video coach Brad Aldridge in 2010 during the team's cup run. When the abuse came to light almost a decade later, speculation turned to everyone else in the locker room as questions flew about what leaders like Kane did or didn't know back then and how they might have helped. Kane, for his part, said he didn't know about the situation at the time, but the scandal cast a shadow over the Hawks' achievements from that time period. On December 18, 2022, Kane and Taves played their 1,000th game together at the United Center against the Rangers, and though they didn't know it then, it would be nearly their last. With the team in the midst of a massive rebuild, pressure was on the two stars to waive their no-trade, no-movement clauses before their contracts expired. For his part, weeks later, Taves went on the long-term injured reserve list with symptoms of long COVID. The build-up to the trade deadline was fraught with speculation, but on February 28, 2023, the curtain officially closed on one of the most golden periods of Blackhawk history, and an incredible 16-year run for Kane that positioned him second on the franchise's all-time scoring list, third in all-time games played, and 4th on the US-born player all-time scoring list. He waived his no-trade clause and was dealt to the Rangers in a 3-team deal. The story's not over for Kane, who likely has a few more seasons and potential cup runs in him, but it is a wrap for the Blackhawks dynasty he was instrumental in building. Regardless of what comes next, it's certain his jersey will one day hang in the United Center rafters and that his name will be enshrined in the Hockey Hall of Fame, and that stories of his on-ice brilliance will be passed down through the generations to all the hockey-obsessed kids who are told they're too small to make it to the big time. Thanks for watching. If you like this video and want to see more content like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button.